Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be continuing our discussion on attachment styles, and today we're going to be looking at the anxious preoccupied attachment style, or sometimes I think is just called the anxious attachment style. And so we're going to dive into this, maybe connect some dots with the Enneagram, and try to understand ourselves better and the people that we love so that we can have better lives, better relationships, and improve things in our lives. That's what this channel is all about. Before we get started, just a reminder, in the description below is a link to my website, tomlahue.com, and I do offer coaching programs. So are you feeling like you're lost your passion for your work, or you're not excited about getting up anymore, you're not sure what the next step is in your life, or having problems in your relationships? The people that you love the most sometimes can be the hardest to get along with. And I work with people all over the world to help them improve their lives and their relationships. And the Enneagram is a great tool to help us know more about ourselves for self-discovery, but also to see a path forward for balance and happiness and purpose in our lives, and to have improved relationships. As soon as you tell me that you're an 8 and your husband's a 9, it really helps me bypass a lot of the work that it might take, a typical counselor or coach or life coach or marriage coach. Just understanding the Enneagram, as you well know, can be a great help in improving our life and our relationships. So reach out to me. I'd love to work with you. Also on my website, check out all of the great on-demand classes, and every once in a while I offer live classes on Zoom as well. I'd love for you to check those out. There's a lot of great learning opportunities out there. So today we're going to dive into this topic, and we're talking about attachment styles. And we're going to take our time. We're not going to rush this, but we're going to get to the anxious preoccupied attachment styles. Now, I've heard of these attachment styles. I did a video on the dismissive avoidant attachment style, so check out that video if you haven't watched it yet. But I wasn't really familiar with these. I've heard people talking about them, but I never really made it a focus of study. And I was challenged to by somebody who was calling me with some questions that I was working with, and they said you ought to look into this, and so I have. And by the way, if you go to my website, tomlahue.com, go to the store and click on the store. Up at the top left corner, there is a little ebook that's only like 14 or 15 pages. I'm looking at it right now. It's called Understanding Attachment Styles, or Attachment Styles. I think the subtitle was Understanding Attachment Styles. Very, creative with my title there. But, click on that. It's a free download of all this information, so you don't have to write everything down. It's a free download, a PDF. Just go click on that and download the information for yourself. It has information on all 4 attachment styles. You're welcome to have that and use it however you want, print it off, whatever. But essentially, let's talk about what are the attachment styles. So there are basically 4 different attachment styles, and this attachment theory came out of the work of a man named John Bowlby, and then it was further elaborated by another person named Mary Ainsworth, and she created an assessment that is called the Strange Situation, and it identifies 4 basic attachment styles. And those attachment styles are secure attachment, which seems to be the gold standard. Like, that's the one we're all trying to aspire to. Some people may just be like this. They're just wired, in a very secure way, and they grew up in a home where love was just, nurtured, and where they were just, given all of the attention and appreciation that a person could desire. And so they grew up in this very, loving home, and they now have a very secure attachment style. So they have a positive view of themselves and of their relationships. And these people, are comfortable with intimacy and independence. And so very secure in their relationships. And that would be what we're all trying to attain. We're all trying to get there, you might say. And we're probably not everybody, I'm sure, probably a few of us are already there. And then there's the other three, the anxious preoccupied, which we're going to talk about today. It's going to be the focus of our study today. And then number three, the dismissive avoidant attachment. And that's the subject of the previous video. And dismissive avoidant, let's say they tend to maintain emotional distance from others. So they value their independence highly and may view themselves positively, but then view other people skeptically. And so they sort of keep their distance avoidant and dismiss their need for connection and relationships. Now, when I was talking about that, I said, you're probably going to see some 5s, some Enneagram type 5s, the investigators, and some Enneagram type 3s, the achievers, and maybe some 8, that kind of demonstrate that dismissive avoidant. And obviously it could be any of us, not just them, especially when you think about the chaos that can happen to us in our early lives as kids. Any one of us, no matter what your type is, could end up with that kind of dismissive avoidant attachment style. And then the last one, number 4, is fearful avoidant attachment, or sometimes called disorganized attachment. Yes, I am looking at notes. You're like, oh gosh, he's reading. Yes, I'm reading and I'm writing. I'm writing and I'm reading and I'm highlighting and I'm underlining. I'm studying. That's what grown folks do. They study. They learn. And so if I am looking down, that's because I'm looking at my notes, which are available to you. Just go print them off and then you'll have them too. All right, so fearful avoidant attachment, also known as disorganized attachments. Individuals with a fearful avoidant disorganized attachment style may have a desire for closeness, but feel unworthy of love or a fear of being hurt. And they can have mixed feelings about close relationships, and both desiring and being fearful of emotional connection, which that makes me think also of type 4s. Yeah, I've got them down. So the types that might exhibit this the most, I think, are maybe 4s and 8s and probably some 6s, but this desire for it, but then being afraid, like not trusting other people. Like other people are going to let you down. Other people are not always going to be there for you or to be true to their word. I'm going to put 6s on that list too, because I think I could definitely see that. Now, okay, so those are the 4 different attachment styles, and we want to take some time to unpack anxious, preoccupied attachment styles. Now, let me just summarize this, and then before I go over all the attributes or characteristics of this type, or this attachment style, I should say. My head is stuck in the Enneagram, so I'm thinking types, when really it's styles in this language. But I also printed off a list of examples of this attachment style from popular culture. Now, honestly, I don't know all these people, but you might, and so it'll be helpful for you if you know some. I know a couple of them. You might know a lot of these, and this will help you get an idea in your mind of what anxious preoccupied attachment style looks like. Now, you know what? Before we even get into this whole concept reminds me of something I heard from Tony Robbins one time. And I like Tony Robbins. I think he's really good. I think he's very engaging and challenging and, very motivational, and wants us all to live with passion and find our joy in life. And that may give you a clue as to what type I think he is. But anyway, Enneagram type. But anyway, one of the things that he mentions is the 6 needs we all have in order to, be fully engaged in life, or to feel like, we're fully showing up to life. And this is just fascinating stuff. But a lot of times these things are sort of like on opposite ends of the spectrum. For example, now you guys that want to jump ahead to the information, I feel sorry for you, because this is what happens to me. I get sidetracked, and then I think of all these great things, and this is just part of this channel. You guys that know me and love me, you appreciate this, but the other people are like, oh my gosh, just get to the point. All right, so Tony Robbins, back to his point, 6 things we all need in order to really fully feel engaged in life and feel passionate about life. And some of these are opposites, which is fascinating. On the one hand, we have this need for security, but at the other end of this, we also need excitement and adventure. If everything is secure and we have food, water, and shelter, but we're not doing anything, we're not discovering or exploring the map, then this gets really boring and we find ourselves unhappy with life. Now, the next 3 and 4 is a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness, a sense of like being in relationship with others. But at the other end of that is we also have this need to stand out, be unique, be special, and be different and be significant. And so these things, while they're kind of like opposites, we need both of them in order to fully feel engaged in life. Now, just as a way of, because you're going to wonder what are the other two, it is the need to continue growing and learning, and then finally the need to give back, the need to like contribute and pay forward, and better the lives of others. And so we all need all 6 of these, and it seems like these attachment styles are very much on this number 3 and 4. Like some of us feel more inclined to want to connect, and we feel that need to belong, like 6s and 2s might demonstrate. And then others, we have this stronger need for independence and to stand out and be significant. You might think of like 3s and 4s and 5s, for example, among other types. Those are the ones that come to mind first. But we all live in this spectrum. We all live in this spectrum of needing to connect on the one hand and needing to stand out and feel significant and feel different than others on the other hand. And it seems that these attachment styles, do relate to this this fact. Okay, so let's talk about anxious preoccupied attachment style. And then I'm going to give you a list of people that I think from popular culture that might demonstrate this to some degree. And again, I don't know all of them, but this is my research and you might know them, so it'll be helpful for you. All right, so the anxious preoccupied attachment style, this comes right out of the printout that I have on my website, so you can print this out and go over it yourself, is characterized by a strong desire for closeness and intimacy. Great, fantastic. I like people that have a strong desire for closeness and intimacy and connection. That's wonderful. But here's the problem. Because secure attachment styles have that desire too. But here's the problem. It's also then coupled with a high level of anxiety about relationships and a fear of abandonment. So you have this desire for connection, but then there's this, big question mark. Like, is this really going to work out okay? Is this person really going to love me? Am I going to matter to them? What if they abandon me? What if they get upset with me? What if they hate me? And so you got on the one hand this real strong desire to have connection, but then you have like this sabotaging influence, like this fear of what if this person doesn't really want me? And then when you mix that, when you have that fear, I think you're going to then see evidence all the time that may or may not be genuine. You're going to perceive it as genuine. You're going to see this evidence that, they don't really care. They're not going to hurt me. I'm going to hurt them first. I'm going to abandon them first. Or they're not going to dump me. I'm going to dump them. Or you may interpret all kinds of behaviors and actions or inactions. Okay, let me say that again. Or inactions perceive them as to be some threat to your value or worth or to your closeness and connection with them. They don't really care. They called their friend and told them about their exciting news before they told me. They don't really care. They didn't call me on their way home. They don't really care. And the person that you're attached to may be completely confused by this, thinking, oh my gosh, wow, this person's so needy. This person's so anxious, preoccupied. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say right at the beginning that I think that probably you're going to find some 2s, some Enneagram type 2s, the giver, the helper, the befriender, the connector. You're going to find some 2s in this camp. You're probably going to find some 6s in this camp. And then, of course, any one of us could be here, especially when you think about what has happened to us in our relationships. If you've had a series of difficult relationships and maybe your parents, weren't really a strong foundation for you to stand on, well, any one of us could end up like this, for sure. Any one of us could be at this point at least sometime in our life. But I think that when you listen to what I'm about to tell you, you're going to say, wow, yeah, probably some 2s and some 6s primarily, and maybe some 9s. I don't want to leave the 9s out, but maybe some 9s could definitely end up here as well. But again, any one of us, and I want to be clear with that, any Enneagram type could end up here. This is not Enneagram. This is something else, and I'm just trying to connect some dots for you, okay? So it's speculation. Let's leave it at that. So a high level of anxiety. Individuals with this attachment style often worry. Who do you think of? Sixes, right? Often worry that their partners do not love them. Twos. What's the fear of a two? Of being unloved, uncared for, unwanted, not appreciated, not valued, taken for granted, not the priority in the other person's life. Remember, the sin is pride. And then what are sixes? Worry, anxiety, what does this mean? Overthinking things and coming up with the worst possible scenarios, right? So they worry that their partners do not love them or will leave them. And that's terrifying. I mean, let's just take a second as somebody who, this is not my attachment style. I mean, just think about that. That does feel awful, doesn't it? Like living with that fear constantly that this person probably is going to be upset with me if I say the wrong thing, if I take the wrong political view, if I don't like the television show, if I don't wear the jersey they wear on game day, this person is not going to like me. They're not going to care about me. They're going to abandon me. I mean, that does feel awful. I can't imagine, let me just say it that way. I can't imagine what this must feel like. I mean, I can kind of imagine because every human, I guess, feels this to some degree, but I don't live with this attachment style. So it does sound like it would be an awful, awful feeling. For sure. It sounds like it'd be an awful feeling. And you can rewind and imagine, like, well, I mean, if your dad wasn't a stable caregiver, or if your mom was a drug addict, and was gone every weekend and left you, with a box of macaroni and cheese and a TV remote, you can certainly imagine why any person might have these core fears about relationships. Or if you had an unfaithful spouse, go back into your past, and if you had somebody that was unfaithful, or maybe even if you were unfaithful, then you know what can happen in relationships. And I can see, how those things could lead a person into this. And the real threat here is that you could sabotage your own relationships, the very thing that you're trying to avoid. Your behaviors and your communication patterns and styles could actually end up sabotaging and causing the very thing that you're afraid of, the other person to leave you. Or you could just maybe check out and say, you know what? I just don't do relationships anymore. And so you have this intense desire to have this connection of people around you, but then you become like this shell around you that just, because you don't want to feel all that fear all the time, you just kind of shut people out and maybe move from the anxious preoccupied to the other one. What is it? The anxious, I got to learn these things better because I talk to people all the time. The fearful avoidant. You might kind of move from this, migrate maybe over to that other fearful avoidant. Like I avoid, or dismissive avoidant. And I can definitely see some fours in here as well. I've talked to a lot of fours, in my coaching program. I've talked to a lot of fours, and I think a lot of fours could end up in these places as well. Because you're going to hear this, one of the things that's mentioned here later is this emotional turbulence, and that push-pull dynamic definitely kind of sounds a little bit like fours. Okie dokie. Coffee. Must have coffee. All right. So where are we? Behavior. Okay. So they worry about their partners, that their partners don't love them or will leave them, leading to behaviors aimed at maintaining closeness and reassurance. And those behaviors are not always going to work out, it's not always going to get that goal. Sometimes it could push people away. Now, here's the list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. I don't know. 10, something like that. Before I go over these, let me just read a list of names of people from popular culture that might exhibit this attachment style. And then we'll unpack, in detail, what the characteristics are of this style. So some of these people I don't know, I have to admit, okay, but this was my research. Ted Mosby from How I Met Your Mother. Okay, Ted's constant search for love and approval, along with his tendency to quickly become deeply invested in his relationships, suggests an anxious attachment style. Ross Geller from Friends. Ross's jealousy and fear of abandonment and intense reactions to his romantic relationships align with his characteristics of someone who is anxious preoccupied. Meredith Grey from Grey's Anatomy. Meredith's history of tumultuous relationships and her fear of losing those she loves. Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City. Carrie's continual questioning of her worth in relationships and her need for reassurance. Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars. Anakin's intense fear of loss and subsequent controlling and possessive behavior. See how it can lead to the very things that could sabotage and ruin a relationship? You know, when you understand the heart of it, the motivation of it, then you can kind of appreciate it, but then the actual effect that a person's choices and decisions might garner them could end up being, sabotaging. Elena Gilbert from Vampire Diaries. Elena often displays a deep fear of losing her loved ones. Guys, I would put these pictures on my YouTube video, but I'm afraid that it would get copyrighted, so I'm not going to put pictures of these people. I would go there and find these pictures for you. Pam Beasley from The Office. Okay, Pam. Before her development across the series, Pam's reluctance to leave Roy despite her dissatisfaction and her dependency on Jim for emotional support suggests an anxious attachment style. Chuck Bass from The Gossip Girl. Chuck's manipulative behavior and intense fear of abandonment by those he loves, like Blair. Marissa Cooper from The OC. Marissa frequently exhibits signs of emotional dependency and desperate need for stability and reassurance. And Jess Day from New Girl. Jess often needs validation and fears the loss of relationships, demonstrating the classic signs. So, even if you don't know these characters, which I know maybe about half of them or less, even if you don't know these characters, when you read the reasons, it kind of gives you a picture of what this attachment style, looks like and how it might show up in relationships. So let's dive deep. Let's look at, 10 different characteristics here of somebody who has this anxious, preoccupied attachment style. And I'm going to say before I get started, this might be you. This might be the person you love, the people you live with. It could very well be your grown child. It could be, your brother or your sister, or your best friend. As you hear this, you might go, wow, I know people like this. Well, and then, the obvious challenge for us is to be supportive, encouraging, to encourage a little more independence for this person. And also reassure as much as we can. There's always the long fix and the short fix. The long fix is they need to own their problems and work on being more present to life and more mindful and balanced. But then there's the short fix of how can I help this person, be compassionate on them, and try to minimize the damage that might be caused because of their stuff. Okay, so here we go. A high need for reassurance. Here's number one. A person who demonstrates an anxious, preoccupied attachment style probably has a high need for reassurance. Individuals need constant reassurance and affirmation. Constant reassurance and affirmation from their partners in order to feel secure and valued. When you hear secure, what Enneagram type comes to your mind? Sixes, right? What do sixes fear? The fear, everything, right? To a degree, but the real fear is of a lack of security, is that I won't have guidance, support, and assurance when I need it, and I'm not secure. Like the ground I'm on is not stable. And so immediately I think of sixes, and then when I see that, constant reassurance to feel valued, think of the value types, and probably the one that stands out the most to me would be type 2s. Although it could be other ones as well, but definitely type 2s. I start to see 2, 6, and 9 here as maybe the tip of the iceberg. And again, every type could need that, especially if you've had a hard day, especially if things aren't going well. You lose your job, people say mean things to you. There's times in our life where we all need that reassurance. We need that support, that encouragement. We need a little bit of admiration can go a long way. A little bit of appreciation could really help at times. Okay, number 2, the fear of abandonment. You're going to leave me. How do I know this is really secure? How do I know you really care, you really love me? They often harbor a pervasive fear that their loved ones will leave them, and so this could lead to clingy or needy behaviors. Somebody's overly clingy, and again, I think it could be pushed to the point where they become like dismissive. Like, you know what, I'm sick of feeling this, so I'm just going to shut it down. I don't need anybody anymore. Don't need anybody. They could very easily get pushed into that. Okay, sensitivity to their partner's actions. So, are you overly sensitive to what your partner is doing? You know, when they take a phone call and they go to the other room, what does that mean? Who are they talking to? What are they, sensitivity to your partner's actions. Anxious, preoccupied individuals are highly sensitive to their partner's actions and moods, interpreting meaning in all these things. And somehow, like, this is affecting our relationship in some way. See, the fact that you did such and such indicates that I'm not really a priority to you. The fact that you stopped at the grocery store on the way home and didn't text me that if I needed anything is just another indication that you don't really value, or you don't really care, or we're not really connected. Or the fact that I'm upset and you're not asking me what's wrong. See, it's just more validation. And you will start to see validation everywhere to your fears. And this could jeopardize, I'm telling you, this can really jeopardize your relationship. Because your partner may be really trying to love you, but this sensitivity, overly sensitive, often interpreting, there's the key word, interpreting your partner's actions and moods as signs that all mean something of potential rejection or potential disinterest. This makes you very vigilant. And that's hard to live with. Can I just say right there, that can be very hard to live with. Like somebody always evaluating and testing you in some way. Everything you say or do is being scrutinized and interpreted to in some negative way of meaning I don't care, or I don't really value, or I'm not really appreciative, or maybe I'm trying to disconnect from you in some way. That's going to put a huge strain on your relationship. You're like, yeah, but Tom, what do I do? I can't, I know. What do you do? Well, you can pray, and you can talk to somebody. And, I think the biggest first step is you understanding what's going on and understanding how your own thought patterns are potentially causing problems in your relationship. Understanding is the beginning of having a change in your life. And when these thoughts do occur in your mind, notice how much attention you give to them, and maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't give so much attention to every thought that pops into your mind or every fear that pops into your mind. And what if, you could realize this about yourself and say, oh gosh, there I go again. Saying something as simple as that, there I go again. I need to be careful following this train of thought, because if I follow this train, it's pretty predictable where this caboose is going to end up. This isn't always a healthy way of thinking, and I need to catch that and then maybe challenge that way of thinking with a new way of thinking, a more healthy way of thinking. And of course, a more healthy way of thinking would be the secure attachment style, which we'll cover in another video. So let's see, difficulty being alone. What is this, number 4? Difficulty being alone. Why? What happens? You start feeling very nervous. You start feeling very panicked. Like, who am I apart from all these other people? And see, they don't really care. And all the worst fears start to come to the surface. So struggling while being alone, feeling anxious or uncomfortable. What if you're not in a relationship right now and you're just out there all by yourself? You could see some 9s struggling with this to some degree, especially sexual 9s. When their partner is not physically or emotionally available to you, you could fear the worst. You could think, what are they doing? And do they really still care? Why aren't they texting me? Okay, number 5, overly invested in relationships. There's a tendency to become overly invested in relationships, sometimes at the expense of losing your own interests or well-being. So losing yourself in those relationships. And again, I think 9s and 2s, could be very prone to something like this. Next, seeking validation. Validation. Validation in my mind is a form of admiration. Admiration, appreciation, validation. I think they're all in the same family. When I think of appreciation, I think of 2s. When I think of admiration, I think of 3s. When I think of validation, I often think of 4s. And all of that need for validation, admiration, appreciation. Think of it as like this strong need that I need from an external voice to remind me that I matter, that I value, that I'm valuable, and that I have, purpose and meaning. Their sense of self-worth is heavily dependent on their relationships, leading them to seek validation and approval from their partners continuously. I think that's probably the problem, right? Because we all of us, I think, need some validation, approval from our partners. I think we all feel that, but it's that word continuously that's going to, be exhausting to you and to the people that are trying to love you. And think you're going to end up probably fishing. Isn't that PHISHING? Fishing for, signs of your value. Saying things that we're going to feel manipulative, that are fishing for, some sense of your importance to that other person or your safety. Well, I didn't want to bother you. I didn't call. I didn't want to bother you because I know, this is a busy day for you. Do you love me? Am I important to you? Do I matter? Well, I didn't hear anything from you, so I just had to assume that everything was okay. Do you love me? Okay. Conflict aversion. Look, you can't notice this backs you into a real corner here. Look at what happens is you've got all this internal conflict, all this internal strife, all this anxiety under the surface, but I can't really let that out and communicate about it and talk about it because if I create conflict, this other person's going to be upset with me and they're going to push me away. And so you just have to live, I get chills thinking about it. You have to live in this state of where there's this internal strife and conflict, but it's hard to externalize it and resolve it because I don't want this person to be upset with me. Man, this is 2s and 9s. Fearful of causing upset and driving their partner away, anxious, preoccupied individuals may avoid conflicts or suppress their own needs. Who does that sound like to you? That is type 2s. That's one of the defining characteristics of type 2. Isn't their defense, I just did a video on this, their defense strategy, was it suppression? Tom, you're so bad at this. Why does anybody ever listen to you? Let me look at my own YouTube channel because I just did that video not too long ago. View your channel. Videos. Type 2's defense strategy. Repression. Thank you, Tom. You did a great job. Repression. Repressing your own needs. Repressing your own, voice and desires in order to take care of other people. Okay, so suppression, repression kind of has the same idea, doesn't it? Number jealousy and possessiveness. Ooh, those are relationship killers, aren't they? Jealousy and possessiveness. They may exhibit jealousy and possessiveness driven by fears of being replaced. That feels awful. Not being enough for their partner. Ugh. Next, emotional turbulence. Relationships can be marked by emotional highs and lows. That's true. That's probably true of everybody, right? But these have intense happiness when feeling connected and profound sadness or anxiety when feeling disconnected. So notice roller coaster. When you think of roller coaster in relationships, don't you kind of think a little bit about 4s, like push-pull dynamic in relationships? And then I also think of type 2s, again. If you go and look at the sexual 2, you know what the key word is for that type? Seduction/aggression. Listen to that. Seduction, aggression. Seduction, aggression. Pulling people in and then being upset and aggressive with, that is exactly what that sounds like. Intense happiness when feeling connected and profound sadness or anxiety when feeling disconnected. Okay. Last one. We're almost done. You're doing great. I appreciate you guys so much. I really do. It's good to have some people in your life that... Okay. Insecurity and self-doubt. Of course. That's kind of the whole thing, isn't it, right? Anxiety. What is this called again? The anxiety... The preoccupied, anxious, preoccupied. Okay, look what it says. Insecurity and self-doubt. Despite a strong desire for intimacy, I'm reaching for it, they often battle with insecurity and self-doubt about their worthiness of love and worthiness for affection. Oh, yes. Okay, so here's the summary. Individuals with anxious, preoccupied attachment style benefit from developing a stronger sense of self. You know that 2 line to 4? Isn't that what that's all about? 2s integrate to 4 when they kind of go inward and they say, you know what, I don't need to take care of everybody right now. I need to know me. Like, I need to be more settled with who I am. I'm a person too, and it's okay for me to have needs, and it's okay for me to have opinions, and it's okay for me to be my own person. And think about 9s, especially sexual 9s, losing themselves to other people. You know, that sense of like coming back to ourselves, a stronger sense of self. This helps this person. Working on building their self-esteem. Where does your value come from? Good question. You should think about that, and it might lead you to some religious answers. I'm just saying. Your worth and value, you know, you were created and with a purpose and design, and your creator gives you value whether you recognize it or not. Think like a $100 bill. What does it value? You know, I mean, I get it. It seems like with inflation, the value's going down. But notwithstanding, a $100 bill has value. Now, the paper itself isn't very valuable. The ink, the paper, the electronic gadgets that they hide in the dollar bill, not that valuable. But you see that paper is assigned value by its creator. And it has value whether it's recognized or not. You could roll it up, burn it, you know, throw it in the fire and devalue it. But it has an assigned value whether people recognize it or not. And much similar with us as humans, created in the image of God. We all have value. And sometimes we forget that value, and some of us more than others struggle with that sense of value. Coming back and seeing that value can be very helpful for this person. Learning healthy communication and emotional regulation skills. In other words, just think of that statement I said earlier, like, there I go again. I need to regulate my, you know, my thinking patterns and my emotional anxiety as best as possible so that it doesn't further damage and isolate my relationships. Look at all this paperwork I got. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me in this video. Fantastic study. So helpful, you know, understanding these attachment styles. And if you're loving somebody that exhibits this, try to be as reassuring as possible while encouraging them to move towards some level of independence. And, you know, we're all going to be patient with each other and grow at our own pace. But this is the laboratory for growth and development right here on this channel. Again, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for joining me on this study. And I appreciate you guys. And as always, be present to life. I'll see you next time.